Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by. Look, this week's video is going to be about installing the Ridge Ryder DC-DC charger from Supercheap. Now this one was supplied to me from Supercheap for the purpose of the review, so thank you very much to the guys and gals there for sending this out to me. It's much appreciated. As you can see on the screen there, they sent me out a bunch of stuff for review. You'll see the tracks there, the tradie toolkit. We've also got the DC-DC charger and the seat covers. Now there'll be links up above and down below to the videos that I've already done. We've already done the recovery tracks and we've already done the seat covers. Now it's time to get stuck into this DC-DC charger. Now as you can see there, the DC-DC charger is fairly straightforward. It's one of the more basic units you're going to find. If you're going to compare this to something like the Projector 25, which I already have in the back of the Pajero. Now the Pajero, it has a solar panel on top, and the Projector takes the DC-DC input from the alternator at the front of the car, and it also takes the solar input from the panel on top and supplies that to the battery. The purpose of the Ridge Ryder DC-DC charger here is going to be battery maintenance and ensuring that I get to site with a topped up battery. Now this has obviously got all the electricity in it to maintain and charge up your battery and get it closer to that 100%, which that solar controller is just never going to do. From a use perspective, or what I'll be using this for, this is primarily for running just a few LED lights. And now that I've got this set up and I'll be pumping 14.4 volts in to the battery itself, I am going to reconnect the fridge to the 12 volt circuit. So whilst we're in here, we're also going to just tidy up a little bit. So we're going to go from this to this, and I'll jump in, I'll show you how we've accomplished that, and we'll also test out the DC-DC charger. We do have a variable voltage power supply here, so we're going to connect that up, and we're going to just apply different voltages to the end of the feed line into the DC-DC charger, and we'll just see what sort of voltages that's going to output to the battery, just out of curiosity. It does say 12.8 to 16 volts required input. We'll see how that works there, and we'll see what it outputs to the battery and what sort of job it's doing. Now this van is a Jayco Discovery. It's a 14 footer. According to insurance, it's actually 17 foot because they go to the tow ball, and it didn't originally have a battery. It did have a 12 volt hooker, which came from the tug, so it came from the tow vehicle, and then that just powered the lights up the top and then the fridge. It's real easy to jump in from where the 12 volt comes in from the vehicle and patch that, bring that up in to the van as I've done here, and then connect yourself up a battery. Now this is a giant battery, 125 amp hour, which is plenty for me. Literally all I'm doing is running a couple of little LED lights inside, doing a little bit of charging services of phones, etc. And the Rangehood occasionally. So basically some LED lighting is pretty much what this one does. I do have one of those cheap eBay charge controllers there, and I've got a solar panel input out the side in the form of a Anderson plug, and then we've just got a fuse panel over there. I haven't been too focused on getting it tidy at this point. The main focus has been on just getting it working. As you know, time and different things like that make it a bit challenging, and I have been doing a lot of work on the Pajero, so this has kind of been on the side. It's just one of those eBay wattage meters, power meters. They're available for about 15 bucks. Now if hooked up correctly, this will show you your current draw, your total current draw over a period of time. It'll show you the voltage on the battery and the watt hours as well. Now I haven't been using for that. I literally just wanted to plug this, connect this to the battery, just so I could monitor the voltage on this battery, and just to see how this eBay charge controller has been working. It is just a PWM, but I'm actually quite surprised. That's been putting over 14 volts into this battery, which is certainly sufficient to keep it topped up whilst away, but it's never going to give it a fully charged, and it's never really going to maintain it that well. So that's where this DC-DC charger comes in. These retail around about the $160 mark, so I think they're good value at that, but if you can pick this up on special, I think it's even better value. Albeit that I'll probably upgrade this one at a later point to an MPPT. One of the mates just picked up a Tracer brand that he's been pretty happy with, so I might have a look at that. I'm also going to change this fuse panel over to a better one, and we'll route those wires behind there, have them come out and just make it a little bit tidier. Going to go out through the floor like we've done here, and out the front, and get an Anderson plug on the end. That's everything disconnected for the battery. I might as well just show you how I've got this mounted. What you see here is I've got a ratchet strap on top, and it's the same sort of scenario that I've got on the one in the car. So I can undo that. It is a shortened ratchet strap. Now that the battery's out, what you're going to see is I built a frame that pretty much fits that battery perfectly, so all sides. And then what we've got here is a couple of eye hooks. Now these eye hooks are what the ratchet strap holds onto. They go all the way down through and under the Caravan, and obviously there's some washers etc under the Caravan that they hold onto. To get that battery out, I literally need to lift up the end and almost take it out from its end. You can't get it out otherwise, so it is really secure and it's not going anywhere. As you'll see, that panel will just lift out. Now one recommendation I've got for you when you're pulling apart a rat's nest that looks anything like this one, get some masking tape and a pen, and you can obviously just write on that and write what the wire is and tape that to the wire, and then when you go back to putting it all back together again, you're going to know what everything is. Looks like it's going to be pretty sweet. This is the end basically where the battery is anyway. The battery sits pretty much in front here. It's going to have our chargers really close to the battery and make wiring nice and simple. And there, we're pretty good. Over here, I'm just going to drill some holes through the board itself, so I can actually route all the cables in through the back. Going to route the wire from the front. I'm going to push them through there like that, and then we'll obviously route those where they need to go. To give you a quick look at the setup I've got here as well, this is basically just a bus bar, and this is what I use for all my negative connections. It's got holes in there so you can run all your negatives in there. So what I do is run a negative direct from the battery over to this, and then obviously the positives come up to the little fuse box here. So all my connections are made here, and they're all fused before they go out and distribute around the van. Our connections from our DC charger are going to be down here, and so is our solar panel. Decent hole there now that I can run our wires up through, just here. Now obviously we've got some decent gauge cable here, some 6B&S. I think you can see how heavy that is. That's a nice thick gauge of wire. This is what we're going to use to run from the car, and it'll run in up to our DC-DC charger, and then obviously from our DC charger over to our battery as well. The reason we're using such heavy cable is obviously we don't want to have any voltage drop, or we want to minimise the amount of voltage drop that we've got. And if you can see on the back of this DC charger here, it also says the minimum input required is 12.8. So we need to try and make sure that we're getting 12.8 volts, which is a reasonably high request from the charger itself. So we want to make sure that we're getting 12.8 to that, so it gets the best chance to do its job and do it well. Once we get all this hooked up, we'll go out and we'll hook up the variable voltage power supply, and we'll mess around with it and we'll see what this does when it gets less than 12.8. Okay, so this is what our panel's starting to look like. In the end I did drill the holes beside the fuse panel just to make it look that little bit tidier. Nice and tidy under the controller there, the solar controller. Basically what I've got is these two here. One of this is going to run to the fridge. I'm going to power some external lights. One runs to the back of the van. Neither of these have been hooked up yet, so I won't be putting fuses in that. This one just powers our lights up on the roof, and this one just goes to the two 12-volt sockets that I've got down here that I sort of stuck in as a quick measure once heading away, and I run some external lights off those. Chargers, literally anything I want. They're just regular 12-volt sockets there. Now, when you're heating up something or soldering something, have to keep in mind that the solder is attracted to heat, so you actually have to heat up the item. You find a lot of people will just, grab their soldering iron and actually apply the solder to the iron. Now, while that's not terribly a bad idea, because that'll help the heat to conduct a little bit, you actually want to heat up what you're trying to solder, and then you'll find you can just apply the solder and it will just start sucking it up. Right, that is there. I'm applying the solder directly to that hole on the end of the wire, and that's taking that solder in, touching the wire at the bottom, and that's sucking that solder in there as well. So we know we've got everything hot enough. And I'll be sucking the solder up into the connection and giving us a real good joint there. Of course, I'm such a fan of shrink wrap, we're just going to tidy up these connections by throwing a little bit of that on as well. See there, that just makes those connections that much nicer, makes them look better as well, and just offers us a little bit of extra protection from any stray wires that we may have had sticking out the side there, so much better. So certainly from up above, it looks a lot tidier than it actually is, and I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so we've got all that wired up, all looks pretty good. What I've now done is brought in my variable voltage power supply, which I've just stuck in there. I had that much wire that I've brought in from the front of the van, which is eventually going to run to the Anderson plug at the front. Obviously we're going to cut that off to length, but this is super handy that it can reach in here, because we're going to turn this on and we'll see what happens. Hopefully everything comes on and we'll get some sort of reaction from our charger. Okay, so I've just got everything turned off. I've turned off the LED lights. According to this, we're sitting at about 12.96, but I think that's because we've just literally had it on charge. So I don't think that's going to be a resting voltage. It's going to help us out with seeing what sort of voltage this charger is going to be applying to the battery. 13.8 volts out, so we'll just switch her on and we'll see what happens. Okay, so we've got power, that's good. Excellent. Alright, well we're seeing that's applying 14.7 volts. So that's going to be the charge voltage there, which is excellent, which is what we want for a deep cycle battery. We want to be charging it around about the 14.7, 14.8. So we've got that set to lead acid. Even though it is an AGM, it still is a lead acid battery. But we'll just flick through and we'll go to calcium. We'll just see what sort of voltage that applies there. That should come up. Yeah, okay. We don't want to do that for too long, but you can see that that's certainly capable of charging a calcium battery, which as they require higher voltage input for a charge. Go over to gel. I'm afraid I don't know what that requires for a gel, but that's dropping way down and it's come up as fully charged. So we don't want to mess about with that too much, but we'll go back to lead acid. I think we have confused it a little bit because it seems to think that it's fully charged now. It hasn't completely switched over from being on the gel setting. You'll see here it still thinks that the battery is fully charged. No, it's on the lead acid setting. So we might just cycle that again just to get it to go back. Right, we might have confused it there. I'm just going to switch off here at the power. The voltage is dropping there as expected, and we'll just turn it back on and we'll see what it seems to think about that battery and see if it comes up to the right voltage of charge. Okay, so we've turned it back on and it's gone back to the 14.7, which is the right charge voltage that we want. So that's good, gone back to 14.7. It's no longer showing that the battery is fully charged, and that's working well. Test, it's pulling about 3.3 amps, well, it's applying that voltage, and we're currently feeding it with 13.9 volts. Doing it with 5 volts, got nothing over here. It does say that it requires 12.8 or higher, so I'm just going to bring this up nice and slow, see if we get any change from that charger there. So we're now at 10 volts, still nothing on the charger. 12.7, 12.7, nothing on the charger. Okay, we've just hit 13.4 here, so we might get a bit of an idea of what sort of voltage drop we've got across that line, because we still have a fair amount of length. 13 volts there, and we're still on. Just going to see if I can get it down to 12.8. 12.8 there, so we don't have much voltage drop in that line at all. It was about 6 meters, so I've taken off about 50 centimeters of that, so we're probably still looking about 5.5 meters of the line. See, we're on 12.8, 3.3 amps, which is what we were seeing earlier. It is applying 14.74 volts, which is what we expected. Just gonna drop it down to 12.7, we'll see what happens. Okay, we've gone to 12.4, 12.7, 12.8, 12.9, 13, so we're back on about 12.9. Okay, so that switch voltage that it seems to come on at is definitely around that 12.8. So if you've got long runs of line and you're not applying at least a minimum of 12.8 volts to this, not going to happen. So keep it in mind, if you're going to run a fair length of line, you're going to need a good size cable to get back to this, to make sure that you're getting at least 12.8 to this DC-DC charger. Otherwise it is not going to work. You can see there, that's basically thinking that the battery is now fully charged, which is probably pretty close to true. This was pretty much topped up before we even started this, so I was interested to see even that if it got up to that bulk charge rate of 14.7, and it did, which was nice. But now it's obviously gone into sort of a float charge, I suppose, if you will, of 13.7. And it's saying here that the battery is fully charged. We'll just turn the power off and turn it back on. And back on. Okay. And pretty much straight away it's gone back into saying fully charged. It did pop up to the 14.7 volts. I didn't catch that, sorry. It did pop up briefly to the 14.7 volts, got there, come on as fully charged, and now it's dropped back down to the 13.7 there. Excellent. I'm very happy with that. It seems to be doing what it needs to be done. I'm interested to see what sort of voltage I'm getting back to this. I think I'm running sufficiently thick gauge of wire to make sure that I'm getting a 12.8 back here, but that's definitely something you'll need to be aware of with these. If you can't feed this with 12.8, it's no good to you. You're going to need to look elsewhere. We're throwing this in the back of the Caravan. We've got a reasonable run of cable that's going between the alternator and coming all the way back to the rear of the vehicle and then into the Caravan, albeit this is literally not far off the drawbar itself, so it's probably about maybe 6 feet, I guess, from the drawbar, which is roughly from the tip of the drawbar, that is, where the engine plug is going to be connected. But 6 feet is, you know, getting near 2 meters, and another, you know, couple of meters or more to the front of the vehicle. So you're talking about 4 or 5 meters. We currently have about 5.5 meters on this cable here, which is the same diameter as the stuff that I've got running in the car from front to back. So in theory, because we haven't actually lost any voltage, we know we had to get down to 12.8 on this before this would actually cut out. I'm pretty confident that we're not even losing, you know, 0.1 of a volt or 100 millivolts from over 5 meters of cable. Really happy with this. The fact that this is powering it at 12.8. Charger's switching on as expected at the 12.8. It's working. It's applying a good voltage for a charge on my AGM battery. It gives me confidence that when I arrive at my destination, that's going to be charged up. And because I am just using a cheaper solar controller, PWM, so the job of this is really just to keep me topped up. It's not really to top this up 100%. It's never going to do that. And it's not to sort of keep it conditioned either. This is where this comes in. I'm going to be relying on this to, you know, bring it up to full charge and keep my battery conditioned while the Caravan is getting towed. If you've got any questions about the Supercheap Ridge Ryder DC-DC charger, this is the 20 amp version, shoot me a question or comment below and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks very much, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.